What are you holding on to so tightly? A relationship, a friendship, a job? Are you holding on to these things so tightly that it's stopping you from stepping into something that could be so wonderful and so different?
Did you push record?
Thanks for tuning into Our Second Act with Paige and Silka.
For your second act of life. Hey, Silka.
Hello, Paige. Paige, I wanted to follow up on a segment we just did, an important topic about dealing and accepting midlife changes. We'll link to that. What came up, which you brought up, is another important topic you deal with and with your clients and on our lives is how do you know when to let go of something that is no longer serving you? Big topic. Talk to me about that.
So it comes down to control, right? Because we as humans think that we have all the control when really we don't. We just have control of our perspective and how we respond and how we react, right? So if we think about it, when I brought this up to you is holding on. Like, what are you holding on to so tightly? And that's around fear. Are you holding on to a relationship, a friendship, a job, where you live? A perspective, an opinion? And are you holding on to these things so tightly that it's stopping you or holding you back from stepping into something that could be so wonderful and so different? Because it comes right down to fear, right? Like, well, this is familiar. This is similar. It's not that bad. I mean, I can deal with it a little bit. I mean, I'm sure that I'll be okay, but I'm curious, if I let go, is there something else behind door number one? Or door number two? So I'll take a pause there for a second, Silka, and see what you have to say about that.
Well, it's that leap of faith. Is the grass greener on the other side? You and I, we did several years ago a video on facing the fear of leaving a relationship. How do you know? I mean, and I don't want to make this just about relationships because it's of so much else. That was just an example. How do you know if it's time or not? How do you advise somebody?
Deep down, we all have a knowing. Things start scratching at us. We start not enjoying certain things. A job, a schedule that we have, where we live, a friendship, whatever it is, it's across the board. We start to just not find the same kind of joy, pleasure, or it's causing us more stress, or we're feeling more panicked, whatever it is. We always get, the flags always come up. It's a matter if you want to look at it. And it's not scary to look at, because remember, you don't have to rip the Band-Aid off. I have to change it all today. It can be kind of investigating, well, what's going on in me? What is this about? Is this the friendship? Is this my intimate relationship? Is it where I live? Is it my schedule that's not working for me? Am I not doing enough things for my health? Is it food that's not working for me? Lots of different things. And the older that we get, the more like ingrained we are with the way we do things and our perspective. And it comes down to, just because something's familiar and similar doesn't mean it's always good for us and it's healthy for us. So start breaking down what hasn't been feeling right. And when you start to have issues that come up, you start to fight it, right? We start to fight things, and want it to go back to how it is. And if you're finding that you're fighting more and more, it means you need to let go. It means you're not allowing something to open up to see what's coming, and then asking yourself, what are you so freaking afraid of, if you have to see it for what it is and change and let go?
Yeah. Of course, the most comments we get in that regard is relationships. People
all
have
kinds of relationships.
All kinds of relationships. Is how do you go about figuring that out? I know one thing that when it comes to romantic relationships that finally did it for me was, could I picture myself without this person? What was that feeling? How did that make me feel? Or how could I picture my ex-husband, for example, with another woman? How would that make me feel? And I was okay. So it's I don't know whether you can project yourself into a future situation on whatever it is that you're dealing with, that where your inner wisdom kind of speaks to you. What do you think?
Well, yeah, that was a big part for you, right? Like if you could realize that, I don't need to have my life with this person. And it's not even a need as I don't want to have my life with this person. I mean, that's huge. And if you're starting to find the other person, like you could say, oh, well, I imagine this person, then
Hmm.
right? Um, it's also about really looking at are the things that are keeping you in a relationship, is it your hangups? Meaning, if you start to release your hangups, do things start to open more within a relationship? Because if you're holding on so tight to your own hangups, your own perspectives, whatever it might be, but you shift and change and open up, does the other person shift and change with you? And then that opens up a whole different positive part of your relationship, right?
Yeah.
So you really kind of have to look at what's going on within yourself. Like, again, what are you holding on to? How is it getting in the way of whatever it is, friendship, job, location, intimate relationship, whatever that might be? And how is that putting a part into what you're holding on to?
Well, then, so how do you let go?
Mm. Number one, you have to first decide that you want to let go. So maybe you've identified certain areas in your life, situations in your life, people in your life, your current career in your life, and maybe you're like, you know what? Something has to change with these things. So first ask yourself, what's the scariest part if I let this go? What can happen?
Hmm.
So you write down what are the scariest things that can happen, because when you talk about it and you put it on paper, you kind of live with that, right? Like what's the scariest thing that could happen? And then kind of be with the scariest thing that can happen. And when you be with it more and more, it's not as scary anymore. Does that make sense, Soka?
Yeah, confronting what you're afraid of makes it
Mm-hmm.
less scary. That,
Always,
yeah.
always. So once you've confronted and it doesn't feel as scary anymore, then kind of ask yourself, okay, if this isn't as scary anymore, what now can I begin to let go of and not hold on? Whether it's my perspective or opinion about my partner that's been driving me crazy, or whether it's the piece of the job that's been driving me crazy, or maybe you want to leave your job after 50 and change a whole new career and thinking, oh my gosh, well, what could I do? Well, if you decide that maybe this wouldn't be as scary and maybe it's kind of exciting, maybe this could be an adventure with anything across the board. When you start to look at a perspective of, well, this could be a really cool adventure,
Mhm.
you start to get excited and you start to change your perspective, that fear starts to drop back and the excitement and the adventure of what could be starts to open up.
Again, relating it back to relationships, going through that sort of exercise can also make you see that you want to stay.
Mhm.
It gives you more perspective on what you're actually dealing with, because all of us go through this. As we talked about in our
Yes.
last segment, midlife changes that we go through give rise to all this sort of doubt about where we are, or what we hold on to and how we let go.
Yeah.
And it shows up in many different forms. It's interesting what you brought up too about friends,
Hmm.
that there are, well, and family for that matter. We get lots of comments on estrangement, things like that.
Yeah, and let me make a comment about estrangement because, you know, the one thing that brings people the most stress, the most guilt, the most anger, the most fill in the blank are family dynamic relationships, right? And it's human beings that set the rules and say, you have to do this because you have a family. You have to act like this. You have to force this situation. You have to do this. And remember, those are human rules. When you, like, I talk a lot about the soul inside of us and the human. This is your journey. So you have to decide what works for you. And if family members or friends start to pull out of the picture because you're doing something different, allow that to happen because that's probably what needs to happen. That's probably what's going to bring you the most calmness, the most joy, where you don't have to keep like this all the time. It's allowing yourself to really trust what's going to work for you, regardless of what anybody else says, and that includes family. Just because you're born into a family doesn't always mean it's family, because who makes up the term family? Human beings, right?
Right.
Family can be created in many different ways. And just like people come in and out of your life for a reason, a season, a moment, it's the same thing with family. So don't hold guilt about what you need to do for yourself, because this is your journey in this lifetime. There's so many different ways of how it can look.
Yeah. And what's interesting too, we're not, suggesting you break up your family or your kids want you to do this but when you do make changes or you voice what you want to do, you might be surprised how your family reacts and how dynamics can shift to make change that doesn't, lead to any sort of estrangement or all kinds of conflict, right?
It can.
Mm-hmm.
However, what I see a lot is we have dances with our families. And if you decide to do a different dance, they're like, "What? Wait a minute. What are you doing? I'm not, I don't do that dance." So it kicks into their stuff and it triggers their stuff. And so they project back onto you. And that's why I always say, when it comes right down to it, as much as we don't want to be alone in this lifetime, we are alone in this lifetime, in the sense of, you make your own choices. This is your own journey. People are with you along the way and they're not. But pay attention to, if after 50 you're making decisions because everybody else wants you to, or you're too afraid, or you're afraid to let go, or you're holding on because it's familiar or similar, then you're not living your life. And you're not going to get a chance to live your life to the fullest.
Yeah. And we don't have that much time left, so that it is an important decision. Paige, we're getting to the end of our segment. Anything you want to leave as a closing statement?
Just, kind of what I've been saying is, take a look at where in your life do you feel like you're holding on so tightly because you're afraid. Take a look in your life of what you're doing just because it's familiar and similar, and start to have a different perspective of, well, wait a minute, this could really be an adventure. And these new experience could really give me things I've never had before. Step out of the fear and step into the growth. Because you know what? You never know when your time's going to be up.
Exactly. And while we don't believe that you only have one life, this is one life that you have.
In this moment, right? In this lifetime, this is the life that you have.
Exactly, and make the best of it. So, Paige, thank you, and we'll see you next time on Our Second Act with Paige and Silka.
For your second act of life.
Bye. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already done so, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. And if there's a topic that you'd like to have us cover, visit our website, secondact.tv. We have a little red suggestion box in the upper right-hand corner of our site. Just click on that, drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.